Hey, folks.
Howdy. I am once again in eating mode, so with video off, but I will turn it on if I finish before the end of the meeting.
I can never remember how to do this, how to claim a host for a meeting. Oh, except I already am. I keep on forgetting to log out of the Kubernetes SIG Docs account. So I'm always like, I'm God in this channel, as opposed to logging out properly and merely claiming the host role.
For future reference, though, Zach, I have the same struggle when I've hosted, and it's you'll find yourself in the participants list. And
also for future reference, I am not God in this channel. I'm sorry, Jennifer.
Aw, come on, he has to be.
It's not a responsibility I want. All right.
Excellent usage of the hat, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Looks like we've got folks here, so let's get rolling. Today is Tuesday, March 12th, 2019, and this is the weekly meeting for Kubernetes SIG Docs. All docs, all the time. We have new contributors. I don't see anybody new, but it's nice to see so many familiar faces. Welcome back, JD. Welcome back, Tim. I'm so happy that 1.12 did not scare you off.
Wait, what's scared?
Oh, so Tim was our release meister for the 1.13 docs process for the quarterly release cycle.
Oh,
and okay. I think Tim took a very healthy break.
Yeah.
After that.
Much needed.
Craig, welcome. All right, let's move to updates and reminders. Cody Clark is our PR wrangler this week. But please check your assigned PRs. I noticed our queue is getting a little long. That's normal this close to a release. Having a whole bunch of docs PRs in the queue close to a release is standard operating procedure, but please do go on and check PRs that you have been assigned to specifically or have been asked for review. If you're an approver, it helps things go more quickly. We have a wrangler to facilitate, not to do all of the PRs, but to help make things go more smoothly. And it goes more smoothly if we all keep an eye on our PR queue. It'd be nice to get that back down under 100 at least. Let's see, a reminder that our quarterly planning meeting for the second quarter is on Thursday, the 28th from 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific. It's always difficult planning a time for meetings like this. It is literally not possible to pick a meeting time when everyone is happy, but it is possible to pick one where everyone is unhappy. Yeah, so it's a Thursday, 6 to 9 p.m. Pacific on the 28th. So the co-chairs and I, Jennifer, Jared, and myself are meeting this week to set the agenda. But I'd love to hear from folks what is on your mind and anything in particular that you would like to talk about at the Q2 planning meeting. Yeah, Brad.
For me, it's just interesting topics, new stuff that's coming out in Kubernetes that we just feel like we don't suitably cover in the docs. I like those types of topics because they help others, because we make the docs better. And I think from a writing perspective, that's kind of interesting. So, whether it's, operator framework or whatever's coming to mind, those are the kind of topics that we want to make sure that the docs are really getting fresh.
Awesome, thank you. Obviously, we'll go over things like the goals that we set at the end of last year, where we are in the progress that we set for the goals that we agreed on, and we'll plan again for the things that we want to specifically cover, things that we want to be, things that we would like to say are true at the end of the second quarter. But if there are specific things that you would like to hear about or talk about, just drop a line to one of the chairs this week, myself, Jennifer Rondeau, Jared Bati, and we're happy to find a spot for them in our planning meeting. Craig, is there, let's see, I'm sorry, I haven't checked all the way through the meeting agenda. Is there anything in particular you would like to discuss?
At the quarterly planning meeting?
Oh, sorry, I mean, sorry, I did not change gears well. Is there something today that you would like to discuss?
No, not in particular. I just am here to keep track of what's going on with Docs. We're quite frankly 24 hours behind in updating the content for the Windows document. I was chatting with Jim online and in the PR for our changes. The doc is coming. It's in very good shape now, and I'll be doing the markdown wrangling this afternoon. So the reviewable update is will be here, and it will have had lots of community review already by that point. So hopefully the deltas from here will be small.
Excellent. Thank you. If you were visiting for something in particular, I didn't want to stuff you all the way at the end of the agenda.
Appreciate that.
But happy to have you though. Let's see.
I'd like
was
to ask a clarifying question of Brad, because I think that I'm just looking at the agenda, at the notes, and what I think I also heard you suggest, Brad, not something I'd like to sort of unpack and make it explicit, is making sure that those new features get documented in a way that accounts for updating older content so that the big picture with the new features in it is always fresh. Am I over-interpreting here, or did I hear you trying to sort of move in that direction?
Yeah, I got to complete. I think that's a brilliant idea. And I'd love to say, yes, you interpreted it perfectly. I don't think I thought fully about that at that level of detail, but I agree 1,000%. So in some ways, I'll go back in time and say, yes, that was completely part of my idea.
Well, I guess why
yeah, but it's excellent.
I think you were going in that direction, and part of why I, wanted to sort of unpack it a bit more is, you worked on the What is Kubernetes rework recently, and I think we've all been, really want to keep movement on the focusing on content. So I'll stop there. I think we've got enough for making a planning, but I think that there's some good stuff here.
No,
and
I agree.
I'm not willing to take all the credit for it, Brad. You were definitely the inspiration for it.
Well, thank you. Good enough. Excellent.
That is a really good point, though, Jennifer, and Brad, by extension. Thank you very much for leading nicely into content review, which is something that I would like to, let's see, I'm trying to figure out the best place to talk about content review. Let's talk about content review now, since it's germane to the discussion. something that I'd like to focus on. We had talked in December about this being the year that we really focus on content, and I would like to move that forward. And I think one of the ways that we can concretely move that forward is by doing these sort of large scale reviews, these big picture assessments of how different focus areas in the doc set, whether they're style guide compliant, whether the SIG responsible for that set of documentation agrees that they're fresh and up to date. So I want to raise the visibility and just put into people's minds that that is how, well, that's how I in particular am looking at how we can tackle content freshness, is parceling out documentation, like finding meaningful ways to break up documentation into reviewable chunks, and like asking folks to take ownership on like a particular area of content, like kubectl, like saying, hey, go interface with SIG CLI, like apply the style guide to this content and go work with SIG CLI to make sure that the kubectl docs, like as a whole, are fresh. Everything that touches kubectl, so like the cheat sheet, the install page, all of the various kubectl pieces of documentation. So if that is a terrible idea and I'm just not seeing it, I would love to know. If there are better ways that we can break and parcel up the documentation for that kind of like style guide conformity and SIG review, I'm definitely open to hearing it. But I would like to move us forward on content review and freshness for the docs as a whole, and start looking at it in like that SIG level ownership kind of way. Folks have thoughts? Brad, use thumbs up. I realize that's kind of a large piece. If folks want to think about that and like share thoughts.
I think it sounds good. It also sounds a bit to me like we're moving into like sort of implementation planning for the principle of the big picture stuff that Brad brought up. So yeah, that, I mean, yes, we need to get into more implementation details, but that's probably not, this meeting is probably not quite the right place for that. I mean, bringing it up, yes. No, well, look, I think you've said what you've said about, you know, sort of the interaction between SIG docs and SIGs that are responsible for feature areas. I think that that's a key piece of implementation. And we don't have a system or a process in place that we can fall back on. It's pretty ad hoc. So
I'm laughing because the moderator has been moderated. Thank you, Jennifer.
I thought I was just, I don't know.
No, that was brilliant. That was well done. You are absolutely correct. This meeting is not the best setting for implementation level discussion.
Well, but I think we got started in important ways here, and I think we need to come back to this meeting because this is where, over time, the most stakeholders show up.
Sure, absolutely.
So I think that's really important. It's also my way of saying, okay, I like the sound of everything you've said, Zach, and I don't have anything more to add to it right now because I need to go away and think about it.
Fair enough.
I mean,
okay,
if other people want to comment, I didn't mean to foreclose discussion either. It seems like we have time to talk about it a bit more if people want to.
JD, you look thoughtful. Do you have thoughts on this matter, or is that just your normal look?
Just normal look. Sorry, I was distracted by some other stuff at work. I'm sorry about that.
No worries, no worries. Okay, let's move on for now and talk about using feature state shortcodes for future releases. So Michelle Au, I think, is sorry if I'm butchering the pronunciation, but asked in the context of this particular PR, in K website 12.9.15 asked whether feature developers should be using the feature state shortcode to describe feature progression in future releases. I think it's a great idea, and I'd like to see that implemented consistently across our documentation set. Right now, it's really inconsistent, and I'd like to see us move towards conformity. Not obviously not in 1.14. Jim, you can stop having that coronary now. But for 1.15, I'd like to see us like find all of the instances in which we discuss feature state and verify that feature states are either stable or graduating in 1.15, and then use the feature state shortcode to document feature state rather than just have that be narrative prose. So I have, I guess
Is it possible to perform like a full text search of the repo and just look for the word alpha, beta, and stable and just?
Oh, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
So, and I have an interesting issue. I don't know if it's really an issue or not, and hopefully not squirreling the purpose of this discussion. But for the feature states, we don't really have something for introduced. So what I'm talking more for is things like KubeADM have things that they implement, like new features, but they're not really alpha, beta, or graduating. They're just new to that tool, your utility.
Oh, yeah.
And I ran into something strange where we were trying to patches during that one issue that came out. I think it backported to 1.9, whatever. We couldn't figure out when KubeADM introduced a feature of KubeADM, but it really wasn't alpha, beta, or any of the above. But it'd be awesome to have that too.
That's a really good point. I know I saw Karen Bradshaw opened a PR this morning to add, I think, like a feature name to the feature state shortcode so that it's possible on pages that have multiple feature states to differentiate between those meaningfully. And it's, I mean, for purposes of isolation of concern, it's probably better as a separate PR. But I agree. If we can add introduced as one of the possible feature states, I think where it's alpha, beta, GA, stable. What are the?
I think it's alpha, beta, GA, and stable.
Oh, no, it's alpha, beta, deprecated, and stable. So if we can add introduced to that, it makes total sense to me.
Cool. Yeah, that'd fix it.
Okay. Let me just make a note of that real quick.
So it doesn't fix, I guess, the greater conversation, but
no, but thanks for putting that in there. That's a really good idea. So I'm going to ask this question, and I realize that there are several questions that it raises as a consequence, but I'd like for now to focus just on this particular question. Where is the best place to document that we're asking feature developers to use that short code?
Is that something that we could put in like the .github section of a KKPR, kind of like the exact same way the release notes people do? So like they have to explicitly say release note none. You could just say like as another comment as part of the PR, if this involves a feature, this is the shortcode you should use in the K website repo. Or we could make it as part of our PR template.
So that was my first impulse as well, was just like to update the K website PR template. And that seems reasonable. So when you talk about adding that to a KK template, do you specifically mean their PR template, or?
Well, that or the K enhancements repo, because that's where all features get proposed, introduced, and eventually worked on.
Right.
And that's where most, like at SIG Docs Release Meisters, we spend our time tracking down people who have filed issues or PRs against the Kubernetes enhancement repo.
That's fair. Cool. Anything more to say about feature state, shortcode implementation right now?
I wonder if in general, if we put together some sort of checklist for PRs, because currently the contribution guidelines are fairly verbose, and my guess is that most people don't really read them that thoroughly. So if we had something a little bit shorter and more succinct, I don't know exactly where we're going to put that, but maybe if we had some sort of checklist that might be more digestible for people.
Yeah, it's like having a short form cheat sheet.
Yeah, something like that.
That'd be a good deal.
I'm not sure what else necessarily would be on there, because I can imagine a part of it would be just link out to the style guidelines and be like, do you conform to the style guidelines? And then you have to go and read that. So I'm not sure how much it fixes,
but we could link to like really key bits, right? One thing that I've seen come up recently is some, let's call them interesting, sort of misunderstandings around template tagging, for example, that have actually broken the PR. I mean, not the docs, but the PR. And people often have trouble. I mean, I think we're still getting people like adding H1 tags to their markdown. And then, of course, their content doesn't show, or it shows up in strange places, right? You can also, sort of foobar, various basic bits of markdown markup. And we get these often enough. Might be useful to call out some of the, I mean, not super often. There's like some, I mean, I'm just following up on your suggestion, Tim. I think, maybe, sort of a cheat sheet of.
Oh yeah, that's really smart, Jennifer, because yeah, I remember your comment in the PR about like unless like for new articles or for new pages, if content creators don't enclose things properly in the template tags, it's possible for content to go missing.
Yep. And
so like
yeah, and historically, we've had maybe more, sort of closer to when we migrated to Hugo last year, but we still periodically get people adding H1 tags or doing interesting things with heading tags that break what they're clearly trying to do. Some basic stuff, really basic stuff. Maybe people ignore the PR template, but we could think about making it short enough to put it in there.
Sure. So what I'm hearing is that Tim's idea of a checklist or like a best of playlist of the contribution guidelines would be a really good idea.
I think it's brilliant.
Right. 2 thumbs up. Thank you, Tim.
And the American and British senses of it.
Okay, let's move on to Season of Docs. Plugging Google Season of Docs. Jared is not with us today, but he wants to boost visibility for Google Season of Docs. If you are interested in the Season of Docs, there's more info at this link. Jared puts a note here, it would be good for Kubernetes to participate. I absolutely agree. So let's see, looks like he says we need 2 admins and 2 mentors. We can let Jared drive that discussion. It looks like we have some time yet, like a couple of weeks before applications even open. But I know that like the CNCF is definitely supporting Google Season of Docs. So if you are, JD, go for it.
Yeah, sorry. I guess I'm a little bit out of the loop. What is Season of Docs?
Great question. So Google Season of Docs. Are you familiar with Google Summer of Code at all?
I've heard that term before, but I have.
Okay.
But
So basically, it's a seasonal program that matches up technical writing interns with specific projects and mentors for them. So it's basically it's a path to training in technical writing and contributing to open source code.
oh, fun.
And it's specifically for open source contribution. And it's a compensated internship, and it matches prospective interns with prospective mentors and opportunities to contribute to open source projects.
Point of clarification, Zach.
Yeah.
The materials I've seen don't mention internships. In other words, it seems to be targeted at technical writers generally.
Okay.
There's been some interesting discussion over on the Write the Docs Slack about it, because it dropped yesterday and there was quite a lot of interest. In fact, at one point I felt like asking people to stop posting the link because it was showing up everywhere multiple times. But at least one person asked, I think, some pretty salient questions about, sort of what is the relationship between technical writers on the one hand and open source projects on the other, because it seems like at least the initial announcement is defining those as not overlapping categories. And so there's a little bit of, I mean, I don't, maybe the stuff is going to get cleared up before the sort of the applications open up. But I just thought I would point it out that, and also that, well, there's more to discuss there anyway, just to get clear about how Kubernetes would fit into the model that that I've seen and been seeing discussed.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity. So it's not just interns. It's
I'm not sure that helped yet, but I'm just saying, I think it's good to get some more clarification. I mean, Kubernetes is a pretty mature project in terms of documentation production.
Sure.
And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it. Absolutely not. Just the relationship, sort of the large pattern, not clear. Jared probably has more.
Jared is definitely the most qualified to talk about it. So yeah, it's pairing up opportunities for technical writers to contribute to open source and providing guided mentorship pathways for it.
I need to run off early, but I left something in the agenda for just a Cube scheduler documentation. If anyone wants to go and discuss it, further, feel free to reach out to me. And also, if there's any other small issues or something like that to get resolved, I'll be around.
Awesome. Thank you, JD.
Bye.
Okay, let's move on to SIG Docs Sec. Zach Arnold, take it away.
I'm excited for this. Okay, so we have a lot of interest. Well, I mean, relatively a lot, I think, about 13 people's worth of interest in documentation of Kubernetes security. And a lot of them look like contributors that I've never had a pre-existing relationship with, except for Jim and Jen and Steve. But so I think that's kind of exciting. It seems like it seems to be reaching a separate group of people that, anyway. And it seems like a lot of people have a ton of availability to contribute. So I think I might have a problem finding something for everyone to do, which is a good problem to have. So I'm going to do my best, as it looks like a lot of these guys are in APAC, to either do 2 meetings or 1. And I'm actually going to try to keep meetings to a minimum and find a way of communicating with people in a more ad hoc fashion. So if anyone has suggestions to me personally on how to run effective working groups, or scheduling meetings, or finding a way to get a channel on Slack, I think that would be terrific. My goal is to have our first meeting to kind of have goals, and what I think a task list should look like already written out. But I wanted to get everyone's feedback and then proceed and actually make Kubernetes secure again, or at least easy to understand how to make secure, and then do that in our documentation.
So Zach, I posted a link in chat. It's to the Slack admins channel, and that's who you ping to get a new Slack channel.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. Does anyone else? I guess I can also publicize that you may still join, and you may join at any point now. Admission is not closed just because we've started, but I am excited to get started. And I'm really excited that there are a lot of people I haven't met yet that are passionate about security.
So what are you going to talk about first?
So my first goal on this list of goals is basically to get an assessment of in this spreadsheet, and the best I can do. Well, I probably shouldn't share my screen because it has people's emails on it, but it seems like everyone is interested in doing sourcing and research of information. So basically finding out, digging through our current security documentation, aggregating all the information, and then presenting it in a narrative style format with tasks for people to basically work through, almost like a user journey, but oriented around securing workloads. And then I wanted to set a context, and you guys can tell me if this is sort of out of the stream of what we should do.
Did you mean you folks?
Oh, right. Sorry, you folks. I'm so sorry. I apologize. Yes, you folks. And because I think when you say, I'd like to secure Kubernetes, kind of like Chris Farley does on Saturday Night Live, it's not really, it's not just that simple. I mean, it's your code running in someone else's container, running on a cluster in a cloud, probably. And so that means that there's a whole bunch of different layers of security to consider. And I'm wondering if it's worth presenting just suggestions and guidelines. So with specific details for the Kubernetes section, but suggestions and guidelines of like, well, if your cloud isn't secure, then it's pretty hard to have a secure cluster. And, and if your container isn't secure, it doesn't matter how good your code is because it's vulnerable, that kind of thing. Does that have any value to people as part of this specific subset of Kubernetes security docs?
I'd say definitely yes.
Okay.
Even if it's, at least initially, and who knows for how long, a lightweight framework that says, okay, we're going to talk about all of the gnarly details, sort of the Kubernetes related security bits, but here are all of the other things that you need to take account of, because just securing Kubernetes is not going to take care of securing your deployment with a small d.
Right, exactly.
So it seems like telling that story is really important. I mean, I'm on record as, saying, okay, reminding people that the first thing to do is not turn it all off so that it'll run.
Right. I mean, and I don't mind that this is recorded, but the first time I deployed a cluster for Wiregreen and we ran workloads in it, I didn't even know RBAC was a thing. So everything was just anonymous, was always allowed.
Well, yeah, because it works.
Right, exactly. It worked. And then I was like, oh, RBAC's a thing. And oh, it's not on.
Well, and not only that, but I mean, RBAC to this day, and this is never going to go away, implementing it right.
It's confusing.
Well, and it's painstaking. It's time consuming no matter what. You can't automate it altogether.
But I think if we have realistic scenarios for people to copy, it would be easy. Sorry. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm so sorry. No, I'm just saying what I am hearing is that that this kind of overview of security concerns, like that doing that kind of top level overview of like exposing different layers of security concerns and like laying out the map and saying, where do we go from here? That sounds like an excellent place to start. So if you're seeking feedback, I'm hearing thumbs up.
Sorry, Zach. I should take my own advice and not dive so far immediately into implementation.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Any other feedback?
I signed up,
Any other feedback for Zach and security and security documentation?
Yes, I just had a quick maybe question or comment on, the overall audience for this. I'm assuming operators, but at what level of security or technical expertise in Kubernetes? And I bring this up because, we see like the Kubernetes basics using Katacoda,
Right.
kind of like the terminal browser-based sessions. And there's things that exist out there in different Git repositories like Kube Hunter and things like that to search for security issues. Is this more like education driven, example driven,
Right.
a little bit of both? That's where I'm coming from.
I'm really
totally spitballing.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that. I have, well, let's see if I still have access to it. So I'm looking right now, but I had what I would consider to be a minimally qualified reader. Nope, it's gone. Oh, darn. I should probably go and request that. But basically, if someone is looking at this information, they have the following minimum requirements. And essentially, it's targeted towards people who have set up a cluster, essentially. So they are comfortable with the concepts of Kubernetes. Like, I'm hoping I don't have to explain a pod, a deployment, but I am expecting to explain RBAC, pod security policy, service accounts, tokens, things like that. Things that are specific security principles that exist as proper nouns inside of the Kubernetes project and in the security world in general. I would expect to explain those, but not what is a workload. And this may get into like a glossary term section discussion or this like that. But does that make sense, Jim? But that's my target
that totally makes sense. And if I could add one thing, if we could potentially add where it sees fit, like some sort of implementable action at the end of all this, per page or per article. How do you know your RBAC is secure besides knowing of RBAC, or how do you know, the X, Y's, and Z's on your own cluster besides reading it? But yeah, it sounds awesome.
Well, it sounds like you volunteered to make tasks for people to validate their security. No, it's actually a lot easier than you would think. Honestly, you could just run, you can make a little Go app and it just attempts to do multiple different things with the pod, and whatever gets rejected, you just basically say, this is the audit of what I can and can't do. Is what I would imagine. And you can make it a Helm chart and people know how to do that.
Brilliant.
This sounds like an excellent seed for discussion in your Slack channel.
Yes.
That.
Over there. Yes. Sorry. Thank you.
All good.
Sorry. I get verbose. You know me.
This is one of the joys of this work, is working with highly intelligent, very literate people and herding all of you cats into the cat wrangling shoot.
Oh, man. That's funny.
Right. So let's move on. JD ducked out, but again, boosting signal. If you're interested in Kube scheduler documentation and working with JD to interface with SIG scheduling, reach out to him on Slack. On GitHub, he's JD Palomino. Okay, that is the end of our agenda. Is there anything else that folks would like to discuss while we've got our time?
I just took a quick look at JD's issue there on the scheduler, and I didn't have time to read it all the way through, but I didn't yet see any acknowledgement that that Kube scheduler doc is auto-generated. So for anybody who works on that, we just want to make sure that that's understood, that if content there is obsolete, the place to fix it is upstream in Kubernetes. So that the generated doc has the has the fix.
Yeah,
good point. Thank you. Good feedback. Anything else to discuss?
I totally might have missed this too, and maybe Steve, you can answer this question. But is it possible for us to make some tooling / I might be volunteering for this, but on making generated documentation a bit more smooth as part of the process of not just releases, because that was kind of a pain to do all that at once, but even if there are incremental updates that make it into master in Kubernetes, that these are not released. I guess whenever stuff is released in Kubernetes, have a way of observing that change and then subsequently creating a PR with updated docs in our repo?
All that's, I'm sure all that's possible. It might not end up being worth it to try to do that more than once every 3 months like we do now.
Yeah, that's fair.
And the question is, does someone have the time to take on that, working on those tools? That's a big, at least the way I see it, that's a big job. But a worthy goal, and so yes, I think it's possible, and I think it's a worthy goal. Question is, does anybody have time to do it?
I know that Kuming started a really good tool. I think it becomes like ironing out the bits and pieces and then making it a part of the CI process.
Yeah, and I don't know what the CI process is now. Last time I worked on it, there had been an umbrella script that would run all the all the different doc generators, I think, except for things like API reference, but it ran all the doc generators for tools. Now, whether we're still using that, I don't know.
I'm gonna add to my backlog.
Yeah.
Oh, which piece of paper am I on? This one. I can add it to this. SIG Docs CI. Okay. Sorry. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Anything more?
Hey, I have a quick question. Obviously I'm pretty new, but I just we're using Travis obviously to run our examples, checks and such like. And what I acknowledge is that everything works brilliantly before US West Coast wakes up, and then things are very slow. Now, I already checked before while we are in the call with SIG testing, and I understood we're using the free version, and it's not managed by them. So my question is,
interesting.
Is it maybe time to look and assess whether we can move to Pro rather than Travis? Unless obviously we all want to kind of shift our time basically and do it while US West Coast is not online, so to speak.
Well, what was your tool suggestion? Other than Travis?
To move to what SIG testing is using, Pro.
Gotcha.
I don't know. Just.
That's a really good question. Or maybe it just involves. Well, it would be nice if we. It would be nice if we had the same CI stack
Right.
as the rest of the Kubernetes org. Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, because we could just throw money at it, but that doesn't. That perpetuates a possible source of technical debt.
Right.
That's a really good question. I think the next step would be to talk with SIG test and find out what it would take to switch our CI from Travis to Prow.
Okay.
Is that something that you would be that a discussion you'd be willing to lead?
I will take the discussion with the guys, yeah, and then I'll report back. Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. All right. Anything else?
Since Danny just brought up a valuable sort of question, I thought I would just take the opportunity to say congratulations on becoming a member of the Kubernetes organization as a relatively new member of the SIG Docs. Really gratified.
Congratulations.
It's really great to see this happen.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thank you guys. Thanks, appreciate it.
All right. Last call. All right, that's the SIG meeting. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye for now.
Bye.